We all set up? Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us today. Over the past several months, a number of incidents have shaken the public's trust in the Denver Sheriff's Department, and that is simply unacceptable. To ensure we appropriately address the actions of a few, and that this does not become a department-wide issue, today I am announcing reform efforts that will include a change of leadership and a top-down review of the Denver Sheriff's Department. We will strengthen protocols for impropriety from deputies as well as advance a culture of accountability within the department. Firstly, Sheriff Wilson has stepped down. I don't want this action to be misconstrued. Gary has served this city honorably, and for that we are grateful. I want to say I don't know any individual, sheriff deputy or the sheriff, who has loved this department more and loves the city more than Sheriff Gary Wilson. After much consideration, however, he and I agreed that a change in leadership would help ignite the significant change within the department that we are looking for. Division Chief Elias Diggins will assume duties of the sheriff on an interim basis and with oversight from the Department of Safety until a national search for the replacement can be completed. With Diggins running operations, the administration has also taken action to address the number of incidents that have occurred and to rebuild confidence in the department by raising the bar of accountability among the hundreds of sheriffs, sheriff deputies, and other sworn personnel who serve this city honorably every day. We launched 4 task forces in May that are composed of internal and external stakeholders, including safety experts and members of the community. These groups will continue their work to examine training, discipline, staff well-being, and policies and procedures within the Sheriff's Department. The Department of Safety, under the leadership of Executive Director Stephanie O'Malley, will oversee the timely completion of those efforts. We also have an assessment of operations and organization of the Sheriff's Department underway by the Office of Human Resources. The city will also consider bringing in external operations consultants for any of the areas that OHR may not be able to address. In the short term, I have ordered a review of the scope and capacity of the Sheriff's Department's Internal Affairs Bureau to investigate complaints against deputies and other sworn personnel, a recommendation that was once made by the Office of Independent Monitor. I have also instructed the Department of Safety to expedite the discipline of pending cases within the Sheriff's Department. I want to thank the dozens of individuals from the city and the community who have stepped up to help open a new chapter at the Sheriff's Department. We want everyone to understand that my administration and the leadership of the Safety Department and the Sheriff's Department are very serious about the fact that we have to have a new day in the Sheriff's Department. What has happened is simply unacceptable, and change will occur, and we will hold sheriff deputies who choose to make the wrong decisions accountable within the framework of all the laws and rules that we have with regards to career service. And with that, I want you to know that we assure that we will provide the best service, the highest quality service that we should all expect with any department in the city of Denver, and certainly within the Sheriff's Department. Now, what I'd like to do is ask our Executive Director of Safety, Stephanie O'Malley, to come forward for some brief comments, and she'll be followed by Executive Director of the Office of Independent Monitor, Nick Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. In 3 short years, this administration has proven track record of recalibrating departments and setting them onto a path of success. The Sheriff's Department will be no different. The Safety Department remains committed to holding our safety officials accountable, and we will continue dedicated work to raise the bar for Denver Sheriff's deputies and other sworn personnel. We will ensure that the work of the task force groups delivers thoughtful recommendations, and we will work closely with the outside consultant and will continue our work with the Denver Office of Human Resources regarding the operational deep dive. This combination of work will provide the city the ability to create a long-term plan for the Sheriff's Department. We have a responsibility to conduct the business of the city under the highest ethical standards and an obligation to maintain the public's trust and its confidence. Sheriff Wilson has served the city with honor and dignity. However, certain actions have been brought to light of individuals within the Sheriff's Department failing to live up to professional standards. We need to hold these specific individuals accountable and designate new leadership to foster an environment of responsibility and minimize behavior that is an embarrassment to the men and women who serve the department honorably every single day. Today, we turn the corner and set this department on a path to success. And now you will hear from Nick Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor Hancock and Director O'Malley. As independent monitor, I work with Denver's Citizen Oversight Board to oversee internal affairs investigations into allegations of misconduct in Denver's jails. I also analyze policies and practices in the Sheriff Department and compare them to national standards to identify areas that require improvement. Why do I do this work? I do it because the inmates in Denver's jails have been accused of crimes but come from our community. They are Denver's sons and daughters, our neighbors, our friends, and fellow residents, and they're coming back to us when their time in jail is over, so what happens to them inside matters. As the Mayor and Director O'Malley have indicated, the majority of DSD deputies are excellent public servants and faithfully execute their mission of safeguarding those in their care. Yet as I reported to the public in the OIM semi-annual report last December, there are also significant problems with the way in which officer misconduct in the jails was addressed in the past. I'm very pleased to be here today to commend Mayor Hancock on his commitment to tackling those issues head-on. I look forward to working with the administration and the Safety Department on the changes discussed today and continuing to report to the public from an independent perspective on officer conduct in the jails going forward. Thank you.
Well, we'll take some questions now.
Mayor, there has been an epidemic of these. The FBI has been brought in, for example, in Baltimore and LA, where they found this is the culture of, there's a culture of we against them in those departments, is what they found. Is that, do you think that's indicated here at all? I mean, do you think more independent investigation needs to be done?
I think that where we have the opportunity to go in and address the individual acts of sheriff deputies and do it with a bold desire of accountability and to demonstrate a very zero tolerance, quite frankly, for that kind of action inside, where they have now created a vulnerable space for the city, for detainees, and for other sheriff deputies. I think that one sends a strong message, number one, and that's exactly what we've been trying to do and that we're going to step up even bolder to do now. With regards to independent review, we have always said from day one, if a federal agency wants to come in, and we'll be willing to work with them to take a look at our Sheriff's Department and how our operations are and what have you, we'll do that. But what we don't want to do, Dave, is to make sure that this does not become infectious and it spreads throughout the department. I believe that 99% of the men and women who walk in and out of those centers every day with badges on serve the city honorably. Want to keep themselves safe, keep their fellow deputies safe, and keep those detainees safe and in order. There have been a few who stepped over the line, and that's just not okay. Yes, Lance? Then we'll come over here.
Part of this is ending up in federal court too. Was that kind of did that spur the administration to do something because the federal judge is kind of weighing in on this?
No, I tell you what has spurred this is that the same way that any resident of Denver sitting on their couch ought to respond to the reports that have occurred on television, I respond the same way. Each of these folks will tell you with any report that occurs, I call it, and what the hell happened? What's going on? What do we know? How should we be responding? Who's responding? Who's doing what? That's what's happened here. is that all of us have been incensed by what we've seen, by what we've read, by what we're dealing with, by what we're investigating. And as leaders of this city, we take the oath to protect and serve, just like these sheriffs do. And that's not okay with us. And the reality is that there isn't one case we're following up on. It's been a string of incidents that, quite frankly, enough is enough. And that's why we're moving to make a change today. And that's why we're going to do everything we can to put all the resources behind necessary to reestablish and rebuild the trust with this public, with our public, but also to send a very strong message to our deputies that we expect more and we want more. I'm sorry, last follow.
Just to follow up, if I may, it's difficult with the system the way it's set up to make changes with officers or deputies because of civil service, career service, that
Sure.
type of thing.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate that this process is going to drag out? I hate to even suppose that some deputies are going to lose their jobs, but address that.
With regards to, let me say this very clearly. I'm putting everything on the table, including taking a look at the classification of sheriff deputies within the CSA and how we can, as a city, create a better platform to expedite accountability within our department. Those officers are sworn, they have a particular status. And quite frankly, we got to take a real serious look and make sure that we're able to expedite accountability for those officers that are sworn and have the ability to affect physical well-being of individuals on a daily basis. And so we're going to take a look at it, but everything is on the table, and as an administration, we're going to look at everything we possibly can, but we do know we have some unique situations with regard to CSA classification.
Lance, I just wanted to follow up on the mayor's comments. You bring a very good question to light with regards to the system itself. As you are aware, all the sheriff's deputies in the sheriff's department come under the control and span of the Career Service Authority, thereby being prescripted by Career Service Authority rules, as distinguished from the Civil Service Commission, where our Denver Police Department and the Denver Fire Department rest. And so our goal is to take a look at the modeling of which we're operating under currently, and if there's some opportunity to make some holistic changes within the Career Service Authority that assist us in addressing discipline, then we're certainly interested in pursuing those avenues.
We got a question over here. Oh, yes.
Who was the allegation of inappropriate force last week, the last straw that forced your hand on this decision?
Again, it was a string of things, and that certainly was one that absolutely, just every one of these just get to you. And as mayor, my job is allow the city attorney and the director of safety and the sheriff to do their jobs, and I do that. But like I said, I'm a citizen of the city, and I watch those stories, and every one of them take just a little bit more from me. And that one in particular took more, if you want to say, took a little more out of my heart and soul. Yes, it's not okay, and we want to fix it.
The new training that was implemented maybe just last month, is that going to stay around that you had talked about, the stress, and are we going to see changes to that?
Come on, both of you.
Well, to your point, we have put a lot of things in place to try to address these issues. I have no doubt that those particular recommendations will still be looked at, be considered, and I have no doubt that new ideas by the new sheriff will come forward, all for the same purpose that you just heard from the mayor speak about, to address these issues.
Chief Diggins, is there anything that right away you want to see changed or anything that you will be implementing?
Yeah, immediately I would say I'm going to do a holistic review of all of the recommendations that have been put into place thus far. I've been working very closely with Sheriff Wilson in those task force, so in conjunction with working with Executive Director O'Malley, we will be moving towards that review.
Mayor, what do you say to the skeptics who will, have comments regarding your statement today, who will say, you know what, we're going to hear these changes, we're going to hear about these changes. What do you say to the people who have this perception there's no punishment, nothing there.
That's why we're also, at the end of the day, this has been an administration that's never looked for just the cute makeup or masking of a challenge. We have always asked the question, what's the cause and effect here? And at the end of the day, we recognize that we need to look deeper, particularly with regards to what rules either help or inhibit our ability to move more expeditiously on discipline. And we're going to do that. And so we literally have two buckets. We have long-term and short-term buckets. And the short-term, obviously, we're doing some of that today where we're talking about leadership change. We're taking a serious look in furthering the task forces, working with Director O'Malley to expedite those disciplines. But the reality is that there are some rules in place that, quite frankly, slow and inhibit our ability to respond expeditiously to some of these discipline cases. And I've asked the city attorney as well as Director O'Malley to take a serious look at how we can begin to tackle those issues. If the public, quite frankly, saw some of, I understand their frustration. They understood the kind of hoops we have to go through and steps we must take in order to provide, discipline in these cases. Many of them will be incensed. And that's just a very bold and candid reply to you. And the bottom line is that you and I are not afforded those same protections in your job. And the reality is that we have got to get serious as a public and as a city that if we want to hold people accountable, then let's make sure that, yes, we protect due process of the deputies and anyone else in the city who works for the city. But let's not allow so many hurdles to be in place to where the city is immobilized from making the right decisions that's in the best interest of the departments, the best interest of the detainees, and the best interest of the citizenry that interact with our law enforcement. And so we're going to take a serious look at that, and we're going to make sure we address it as best we can. And we're going to ask the public to join us, and we'll make sure they're logical comments and understanding of what we're trying to do. And it is about the protection of everybody who's involved.
Mayor, just
Yes.
to be clear about that, can you say, or what you're saying, that it's been too difficult to
Yeah, it's time-consuming, it's difficult, it takes a lot of resources, and I'll tell you that the public doesn't understand why, if you have officers who are any sworn officer who has stepped over the line, why it takes so long to dismiss them. The reality is we put them on administrative leave. They're put on administrative leave with pay, and while the investigation goes forward. No one here argues against due process. You have a right. But at the end of the day, once we have all the facts that we need in order to make the right decision, we're still inhibited by the steps that we must take within the career service process. So the reality is, yes, let's reply and do what is more logical and sensible. With most people, an average person might look at it and say, now that process makes sense. But what most people say, why is it taking 9 months, a year and a half, those sort of things. And so we can remove the barriers and say every complaint goes to IAB. But as we find the facts out, what we have is a challenge executing the discipline.
Can you talk can you elaborate a little bit on the process by which you're going to investigate how well IAB investigates complaints? What will that look like? What would that entail?
I think it would entail taking a look at best practices across the country as far as sheriff's department, because they're a unique unit. Take a look at sheriff departments around the country. We may call in some independent folks who have some use or some expertise in this area. We've already begun some of that conversation. Talk with the sheriff deputies that are in IAB to find out what capacity they have or don't have. But we'll take a serious look at it and make sure that, again, it's about protecting the rights of detainees, but also making sure that we have the capacity to take a serious and thoughtful look at these complaints as they are brought forward. Let's take one more question, and we'll conclude for today. Any others?
Sheriff Wilson's, what were the conversations leading up to this, and what will he be doing now if he's staying home?
Well, I can tell you about my conversations, and I'll let Director O'Malley address it. Sheriff Wilson and I have remained in contact and conversation throughout these stream of investigation, and very candid, good conversations about developing strategies to address them, keeping me in the loop about what was going on and how he's addressing internally bold, smart plans, all of which we will continue going forward with. And one thing that I have nothing short of, and that is respect and honor for Sheriff Wilson. What became pretty apparent and clear in our conversation, our last one at least, is if we can use a sports analogy, this was a very good pitcher on the mound who had just, and not so much about what he was doing, but he had to pitch himself out of a situation, and the more pitches he threw, it just wasn't happening. And, and so even some of the great pitchers have to be visited on the mound at times and be advised, and then at some point walked off the mound. That doesn't mean that you get rid of the pitcher. That means that they go and rest up to live another day and to come back to the mound and try again. And right now, I believe we have one of the best pitchers in the nation, a sheriff who led this department to Triple Crown accreditation, and is respected around the country. And I quite frankly believe that he is a leader, and unfortunately, the department let him down. And he needed the opportunity to, into his own device. If I can say this about him, he also recognizes he's a smart guy and one who's been a tremendous asset to this city and to this department. And so I'll let Stephanie O'Malley talk about what's next for Sheriff Wilson.
With regards to where the sheriff is going to go, Sheriff Wilson, of course, is in the Career Service Authority system. He came from the rank of a division chief, of which he'll go back to after having resigned his position. Specifically where he will serve within the Sheriff's Department is going to be left to the discretion, of course, the Sheriff Diggins at the time, in consultation with myself. Of course, we're going to be looking at where Gary's skill set is and where he could add and continue to lend value inside the Sheriff's Department, but that specific decision has not been made as of yet.
One or two more questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.